The doctrine of the Holy Trinity is at the very heart of the Christian faith, and it is a mystery. As a mystery, it stands beyond our comprehension, our understanding in some fundamental way, and can never fully be got at, so to say. As St. Augustine said, if it is comprehended, then it is not God. And thus, the Holy Trinity remains a mystery. Nevertheless, this mystery is something that has interested me and intrigued me for some time now. And it is related to various currents of thought beyond the Christian faith. And so what I'd like to do in this video is sketch an understanding of the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. One which is limited for sure, given the topic at hand, that is the very nature of God. And so it is with due reverence and humility that I approach this topic. But let's get into it, because there's I think interesting things can be said, and this doctrine can be made sense of to some degree. So let's get into the mystery of the Holy Trinity. So the first point about the Trinity is that the word Trinity means a set of three. Okay, so already the idea is that the nature of God can be described in terms of threeness, whatever that means. But the thing to point out about this very word Trinity, this threeness of God, is that there are theological currents in the pre-Socratic tradition which very much emphasize the place of number in the grand cosmic scheme, notably the Pythagorean tradition. The mystical figure of Pythagoras stands before the time of Plato and the time of Socrates as a great seer and a great prophet of the ancient Greek world. And for Pythagoras, number was divine. Indeed, the central motif of the Pythagorean schools was the tetractys, or the decad, which was their holy number, a triangle comprised of 10 points, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And all I would like to say here is that this current of thought, which emphasizes the divine energy of number, very much factors in to this whole business of the Trinity. Because as the name implies, our topic is a threeness. So, we have before us a circle, and this circle represents a number, and the number which it represents is one, or oneness. And this one is the central focus of many philosophical schools and religious schools which emphasize the unity of being. This one indeed represents being. For if there is not one, there is nothing. And one, how can I say it? Going from 0 to 1, so to speak, from nothing to one thing, to unity, is in a sense the basic and essential metaphysical moment. Why is there something rather than nothing? This, it has been said, is the primordial metaphysical question. This is the question that prompts answers from various metaphysical schools. Why is there something rather than nothing? And this is what our number one, or the Greek monad, represents for us. The unity of all things, the one source of all things, of all diversity, of all multiplicity, of all of the stars, all of the planets, all of the animals, all of the plants, all of the humans, all of the far-off galaxies, or anything that is manifold, and anything that is multiple, in as much as we inhabit a universe. It is all one. It is all united in some manner. It is all connected in some manner, and that manner is the manner of its being, that it is one. This one is the source of all things and the end of all things. So it's the arche and the telos, the beginning and the end, or the alpha and the omega of all things. From the one to the one, all things spring and all things return. All things proceed from the one and return to the one. So this one is given the name the Father in the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. This primordial source of all being with a capital B. And from the one proceeds the two. And here we have the emergence on the Neoplatonic scheme of mind, or in the Greek, nous. And this mind represents the intelligibility of the one. So it represents the patterns, the forms, the logoi, which underlie the whole cosmos, the whole creation. These are the ideas, the forms, the patterns by which all things are made, through which all things that are come to be. The Son is the Logos, or alternatively, the wisdom of the One. The Son is the wisdom of the Father, the Logos of the Father. Wisdom, mind, Logos. Now, remember that the One is beyond all things. Anything that is has come to be from the One and is bound to return to the One, but the One is essentially transcendent of all things. And as transcendent, as the transcendent source of all unity, the One is beyond mind. It is beyond nous, it is beyond logos. It is incomprehensible, to mention Augustine once more. If it is comprehended, then it is not God. And this Father, this One, this monad, represents that basic, fundamental theological insight that there is an infinity here beyond all things which cannot be got at. Finally. Yeah, it's transcendent. And I think the word transcendent means beyond, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But that, in any case, captures what is important about this aspect is that it is beyond. It signifies the beyond understanding, beyond being, beyond because the source, the root, the origin, the telos, the end of all. And so it must be beyond all. But haven't we just said that from this One comes a nous, a mind, a logos, by which all things that are come to be, the pattern by which they are made, by which they are crafted, the blueprint by which they come to be. And so there is, of course, a sphere of intelligibility here, a sphere of mind, which makes the One somehow intelligible. I like this image of the intersecting circles. I think it's very helpful in approaching these things. And what I would like to emphasize here is that we have a section of the circle, the One, the Father, which is beyond the circle of the Son. And that captures this transcendence, this beyondness. But we also have a part of the circle intersecting with the Son, where the Son proceeds from, or is begotten by the Father. And so there is a degree to which mind comes close anyway to this Father. And indeed, even if our knowledge of the Father, of the One, is simply that the One is, if that were, so to say, the only thing that could be said of the Father, it might be enough, you know. And it's a very simple thing. The One is. There is something rather than nothing. This basic metaphysical premise. The being is. And whether we can comprehend that being, whether it is finally beyond us in some sense. This assuredly is the case, but already this is saying something, isn't it? This is a kind of insight, isn't it? Even if it is somewhat paradoxically an insight that points to its own limits, to its own boundaries, to its own limitations. It is perhaps the primordial limit on mind, is to say that mind is related from the first to that ultimate source of being that is beyond it. That mind stretches towards being, and that being is infinitely beyond mind. Nicholas of Cusa, the 15th century mystic, is brilliant on this and speaks of how God, as the infinite, is necessarily transcendent of a finite mind. So, to return to the Son, on the Neoplatonic metaphysical schemes, we have the monad, the Father, and we have the nous, the Son, the Logos, the mind, the wisdom of God. This is the realm of Platonic forms, of ideal patterns, of essence, which guides, shapes the whole cosmic order according to intelligible, mind-like patterns. And this Son, you see, is very important because here we can know something of the divine. You see, there is a grace in this extended to us, that mind participates being, and as such, being is intelligible to some degree, however limited that intelligibility may be, however much more we, however much we learn of reality, say it this way, however much we learn, there is always a beyond. Such is the structure of the mind. But this is not to invalidate what has been learned. It's not to say that the patterns, the forms which we come to know are not real, are not partaking of being in some way. They are. There is truth that the mind can contact. Indeed, the mind is, we might say, shaped for truth. It is, its its telos, its aim, its end is truth. It is always seeking truth. But there is beyond. There is beyond what can be said, can be known, can be formulated, etc. But is this a problem? Is it a problem to say that because we cannot know so, fully, exhaustively, ultimately, and for all time, because there is always a beyond that we cannot really ever know? You know, I, I suppose to a certain to a certain kind of mind that wants full, exhaustive, perfected certainty for all time, that and defines truth in that way, that we must know every jot and every iota, otherwise we cannot make any claims to truth. Well, then that would be problematic. But it doesn't seem to me that truth is this way. Like it seems perfectly coherent to say that there is a beyond of the mind, that the mind is always reaching, it is always stretched and extended towards. This is its nature, as Brentano has commented. And yet to say that the mind can partake of truth, of being, and progressively so, and advance in knowledge and understanding as it comes closer and closer to this truth, perhaps never reaching it in a final, ultimate sense, but yet still contacting it, knowing it. So this nous too is the, well, on for example, an Aristotelian and Platonic anthropology, this is the noetic core of the human being, the mind-like core. Well, well, not mind-like, the mind, or classically the reason of man, of the human being, that is what is essential to what makes us human, is that we are possessed of minds capable of contacting being at some level, however imperfectly, however partially, but yet most definitely contacting being. And so we have being, we have mind, the cosmic mind by which all things were created and formed, and the mind of the human being, which partakes of that cosmic mind to some degree, to whatever degree. But if truth has been spoken, it is by participation in this mind, this nous. So let's go on to the three, which proceeds from the Son, the Holy Spirit. Now, here we have life, love, joy, bliss. And we have a dynamic principle, living principle, the spirit, that word, it's like the wind that blows, that the breath that we inspire and expire, that flows and moves our words, and so we can speak by the spirit, and it is a dynamic movement through our hearts and minds and souls. And so here we have a dynamic principle of life. And so in the Neoplatonic scheme, we have soul here, psyche, um, soul, anima, life. And I think of this as a kind of energy, as a kind of dynamic energy, which is seeking to return to the one in prayer, in praise, in love, in devotion, in celebration. And again, I find helpful the intersecting of the circles, because the Holy Spirit partakes of the Son, it partakes of the nous at its highest. Life, that is, can be rationally, I don't know about rationally, can be guided by reason, guided by mind. The mind that partakes of being and truth can bestow upon life its wisdom. And this wisdom can become the center of life. Life can be lived with wisdom, and it cannot be. But the promise held out here is that it can be, that there is a link, an interconnection between these realms. Properly speaking, of course, they are all one realm. The three for the interesting Pythagorean insight here is that all number, any multiple, so 3 being a multiple, is grounded in its identity by oneness. One is that primitive which establishes, anchors any series. And so the thought process here is that to establish, let's say, threeness, you multiply 3 by 1 and you establish threeness in that way. And so you could multiply 1072 by 1 and you will arrive at 1072 and so on to any number in the series up to however far you want to go. I like this. I think this is an interesting way of, it's an interesting analogy for the way in which the one is immediately present at any point in the series of multiplication, in the great swirl of multiplicity. And so we arrive here at threeness, ostensibly furthest away that we can get from the one, from the Father. This is the fullness of the procession which flows out from the Father. And yet, secretly, inwardly, in that flowing out, is the arc of the return from the one to the one. And so I really think about this spirit part as life, the life, life, your life, the energy of that, the breath that sustains that, essentially. Quite literally, of course. You know, But then this breath can be infused with wisdom, can it not? Our words can, well, words indeed are a great mystery, and words are our spirit or breath infused with wisdom, infused with logos, patterned, patterned breath, yeah. And patterned breath is what the word is, and the sun is the word, the sun is the logos, the wisdom. And the spirit is the breath, this dynamic principle of life. And so, as plants, as trees, as flowers incline to the sun, so all things pray, all things, all life is inclined to its source, to its origin, to give thanks for being, for life. And so bloom, flower, grow, thrive in joy, in radiance, in exaltation of that one which is the source of all and to which all things return. So just as plants pray in the summer to the sun, so all things pray in their own manner. And the human being is capable of this prayer. In the Anglican Communion, it is said that we are gathered here in the Holy Spirit. This is helpful too because it's like that spirit that moves in our hearts, that secret energy that blows here now and blows there now and goes waxes and wanes and I like this image of the wind for the spirit because I mean again the word is related to wind, it's related to breath. And so it's this dynamic principle, whereas the one is akin to the metaphysical absolute and as such is like a static, abiding principle, a principle that is immutable, cannot change, stands firm behind, beyond all things. It's is the primal is stands firm. By contrast, the spirit is this mutable, dynamic principle, this principle that can move people to, it's the stirring of conscience too. It's the stirring of life towards holiness, towards health, towards holiness, towards what is good, what is true, what is beautiful. I think there's something to do with the Platonic transcendental of beauty here too. So it's the love and the life, is the love of life, you could say. So the love of all of the beauty of God's creation, of the different flowers, of the sun, the moon, the stars, other people, and all the great radiant beauty that surrounds us. This attraction that is felt towards being, this attractive, beautiful quality of being leads us then into the mind, into the truth, into the fundamental, abiding, eternal verities underlying the whole show. And these in turn point to that ground, that infinite ground of all, from which all things spring and to which all things shall return. So, I'm sure that this presentation is limited because my mind is limited and because the topic, of course, is the nature of God. And so I'm under No impression that I've sort of spoken finally here about the nature of God. Of course I haven't. What I hope to do though is to share with you some of the journey that I've been on in seeking to understand this. I really desire um I really seek to understand, you know, I'm really called to understand and drawn to understand this mystery. Fully aware that it is, of course, a mystery, and that my understanding will be imperfect and stumbling. But but so those are some of the things that that have passed through my mind contemplating this mystery of the Holy Trinity. In conclusion, I'm going to make a few comments on what has been said. So the Neoplatonic scheme, which I've been alluding to, the one, mind and soul, on the monad, nous, and psyche, is a processual model. It starts with the one as the absolute linchpin of the whole thing at the top, the transcendental unity, and it proceeds then through nous into psyche, into soul, and leads into this immanent principle, the soul of the world, this dynamic principle of life and love that I had just mentioned. This ontological model is called emanation. It's like a waterfall that is full and abundant, superabundant indeed, and flows forth from itself, pours forth its splendor. And I really love this, and there's a lot to be said about it. But it must be said in discussing the Trinity, as we are, that the Council of Nicaea, which was really the place where the dogmatic formulation of the Trinity, of the doctrine of the Holy Trinity came to be established in the 4th century, challenged this emanationist picture and indeed affirmed the co-equality, the co-eternality, and the consubstantiality of the persons of the Holy Trinity, that is, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You see here that they interrelate, they are co-equal. There is not one higher than the other in that sense. So the subordinationist model, which is this one we just showed, was challenged, was rejected at Nicaea. And I just want to make that comment because this is also one of the points of difference, perhaps, although I'm not fully sure about that myself. But I mean, at least on the face of it, one of the differences between the Neoplatonic understanding and the Christian doctrine of the Trinity is that one is subordinationist and emphasizing emanation in this top-down sort of fashion, and the other is emphasizing the co-equality of these persons, which nevertheless share one essence. They are one God. We are talking about one God here. And so again, these Pythagorean resonances, it is one fundamentally, and it is three. And You see what? There's something about this too where that's paradoxical in a way, because something can't be one and three at all, can it? Really? Like if I have uh, three pebbles in my hand, then I have three pebbles in my hand. I don't have one pebble in my hand, do I? I have three. And so I mean, but then if I take two out and I just have one pebble in my hand, then I have one pebble in my hand. And I don't have three pebbles. So, like at a basic level, or at least in terms of the categories of Aristotelian formal logic, it is an impossibility to be one and three, really. But after all, we are discussing the nature of God, and the the best I have with this is that this is paradoxical. This is a coincidence of opposites here. Um, our categories begin to sort of break down and are transcended in some manner. The affirmation or the dogmatic affirmation of the doctrine of the Holy Trinity is, that God is one and three in different ways, of course, one essence and three persons, but but still one and three at the same time. And one can spend a long time trying to bend one's mind around this. As with the example of the pebbles, like how can something be one and three? And this gets into what's meant by essence and person, etc. But that's not the purpose of this video, not to elaborate at length on dogma. The purpose of this video is to share with you, the viewer, yeah, a journey that I've taken in contemplating this great mystery, which is at the heart of the Christian faith. And I sincerely believe that what this model that I've just laid out is really like a deep metaphysical truth. It's a very deep picture of how reality is. So whether you're nominally committed to the Christian faith or not is not really relevant to what I'm saying here. I think this truth can be acknowledged by many faiths and many worldviews and many perspectives. Although I think that the Christian formulation of this doctrine is the clearest, the most luminous, the most articulate, um, the most profound, really. Like genuinely, it's stunning the depth of this metaphysical formulation. And so I'm deeply thankful and indebted to the Christian tradition in that regard, and consider myself Christian for that reason. But this is not to exclude alternative worldviews, because what we're talking about here are very fundamental metaphysical insights into the nature of being, the nature of mind, and the nature of life, and how these interrelate and interconnect and mutually relate to each other. And so scholars like David Bentley Hart will talk about Christian Vedanta and Sat Chit Ananda and make connections to the Vedic tradition with these three principles that have just been outlined. Anyway, so a recommendation on that would be a book called The Experience of God by David Bentley Hart. This theme that I've just laid out is at the center of that book, and I highly recommend it because it's very much influenced and informed my thinking on this topic. So yeah, Trinitarian ontology, the Trinity, the doctrine of the Holy Trinity as a metaphysical picture of how the world is, how reality is, and how it unfolds. Um, Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your attention. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like down below. I'd love to hear any of your comments, thoughts in the comments section. And if you'd like to hear more content, please subscribe. Thanks so much for listening.